Today's video is different than some of my other ones, as I'm getting to the end of reviewing my EOS film camera collection. I want to start incorporating some other photography and filmmaking videos. And today I decided to talk about my printer, which is the Canon PIXMA Pro-100. I've owned this printer for about 5 years, so this is kind of a long-term review of it, which I think could be helpful for people who just bought the printer, who are thinking about buying the printer, or who may run into one on the used market. When I first started getting back into photography, about 6-7 years ago, I had a Canon all-in-one printer for everything in my house, meaning I would print random documents, PDFs from there. I would scan documents into there. I would print family photos from there. So it was an all-in-one that you see at Best Buy, Office Depot, or whatnot. When I started shooting more photography and I wanted to experiment with getting some of the work I was doing on the screen onto paper, I was using that printer. And that printer did really well to a certain extent, but I could feel the limitations of it. And I also knew that I was going to want to print larger than 8.5 by 11. Around that time, thankfully, I found a secondhand copy of the PIXMA Pro-100, which was in pristine condition. And not really knowing much about the differences in printers at the time, I jumped in and bought it, and I really don't regret it at all. So the main purpose of this video today is to express my view of this printer, to vouch for the quality of the printer, to vouch for the quality of the prints themselves in terms of holding them in your hand, looking at them, and to vouch for their lifespan, at least over the 5 years that I've had this. In the inkjet printing world, there are pigment printers and dye-based printers. This is a dye ink based system. I don't think anyone's going to argue that this is better than the printers that are higher up on the product line in Canon's lineup, or that this is better than any of the professional printers that you find at some of these photo labs that you may send your stuff to. But the quality of prints that come out of this are pretty unbelievable. And if they can last years in the situation that you need the photos in, or your family and friends, or even people buying prints from you, they can last long enough for them to get the enjoyment of those prints, then it's totally worth the investment in my mind. Printing black and white photos was one of the big reasons why I got this printer, and the reason I was excited about getting this printer. Now in my samples I only have a couple black and whites to show you, because I think more people will be printing color, so I wanted to show you the quality of the color prints I've kicked out. But for me, black and white was what I was really looking forward to, because my all-in-one printer just didn't give me the black and whites that I was looking for. But as you can see with the prints from the PIXMA Pro-100, the black and whites are amazing. And really, I couldn't be happier with the prints. Some of these are shot on film and scanned in and edited and then printed this way. Some are digital, but the quality and tones of the black and whites from this printer are pretty awesome. Now, this review is kind of just an emotional one in terms of expressing my reaction to these prints when I initially printed them and how they've held up over the years. For example, this photo is probably one of the first prints I made from this printer. So this is 5 years old. This one's probably 4 years old, 4 to 5. And this one's probably 2 to 3. Now, other than a few scuff marks from me just mishandling these, because some of these are just test prints, the quality on all 3 of these has held up perfectly. There's no artifact of aging or anything like that. Not all these have been displayed necessarily, but they have lasted this long. So let's look at a couple of the color samples from this printer. This is a smaller one, but I printed the same photo larger, and I've actually printed this photo and displayed it in a local art gallery at about 11 by 14 size or so, and that gallery presentation held up against all these other fine art photography prints from these other photographers that were probably printed from everything from darkroom to larger format printers that stood up next to those. In terms of everyone walking by, no one was going to be able to tell, well, that was from a die-based Pro 100 and that was from, you know, another model or whatnot. To the eye in those settings, it held up perfectly. So whether it's color on glossy or luster, or black and white on luster or matte or whatever, these prints usually hold up visually to almost anything you're going to see. A lot of the negatives that you'll hear will be in the finer details and stuff that you may not notice, which when you're first starting out printing may not make a big deal anyways. Like I said, my main purpose for this video is kind of an emotional one to express to you that, you know, this is from someone who's used this printer for years and has printed these photos like these for multiple uses, and they're awesome. This is a printer. This is a print that's it's kind of just a test print. I took this photo last summer digitally, and I had this sample pack from Hahnemühle, and this is printed on PhotoRag metallic, and so it's hard to tell on camera, but it has a pretty cool texture and sheen to it, and the weight is really heavy. It's 340 GSM, so probably the thickest, one of the thickest papers I have, and it came out great. It's totally frameable. I feel like I want to try some black and white photos on this paper, but this paper went into that printer and did fine with the right ICC profile and the right settings. It's completely flexible to print on all kinds of paper and all kinds of images. A quick note, you can print borderless on this printer, although most of my samples do have a border. Most of the time I like having some sort of border. There are situations where I have print borderless and it's come out great. That being said, another benefit that I really was excited about getting with this printer was the capability to print 13-inch wide prints. And I have printed a handful of those. Granted, obviously they take up more ink, so I'm selective on what I do there. But here's a few 13-inch wide. I don't know how easy it is to see that. But this is one that hung in my house for years and just recently came down. So this was exposed to light. Not direct sunlight, but was exposed to some sunlight and other light. And I'm sure if I had a comparison video when I first printed it to now, you might show slight degradation, but to my naked eye, it looks just as good now as it did the day I printed it. And this is another photo that was printed years ago and hung in my house and was exposed to light just like that one was. And again, looks just as good today as it did back then. That's a photo. I would probably go back and edit slightly different now, as I've learned a few more things. But these are just examples of the quality of the prints coming out of this. And here's another one. This one was probably, this may have been the first 13 by 9-inch print I kicked out of this printer, because ironically I took this photo right around the time I got this printer, and I wanted to see its capabilities. And it's pretty amazing. I mean, I think all the any little oddities or quality critiques that you could make about this would be in the camera and lens itself and not the printer. If you go look really microscopically and see some of the maybe if there's any softness at all, that's because of the lens. But overall, this is a really cool shot, and the printer translated it awesome on this Canon luster paper. Some of the other things about this printer that I like are the affordability of the ink. This could probably be said with the Pro 10S as well, but to refill the whole printer, it's $130 or so, which sounds like a lot if you're coming from the world of all-in-one printers if you're coming from something else. But when you compare that to the ProGraph 1000, which looks like an out-of-this-world type printer, this is much more affordable to refill the inks. It has dedicated ink for black and white, which I already said, which is a huge deal for me. I don't think I could have a printer now that doesn't have that, but I think all professional photography, professional printers have that now, so that's pretty common. Other things I like about this printer are the fact that I can let it sit for a long time, go back and just make sure a couple things are cleaned and print pretty quickly. Nothing dries out. I'm not really losing ink for letting it sit a long time and whatnot. It sits, I go back, I do a roller plate cleaning on it, which is simple in utility, and I'm good to go. Another benefit that I've gotten really used to using is the Wi-Fi capabilities. And it's also set up far enough away from my desk that it would be difficult for me to not print wirelessly. So Wi-Fi is a feature that I'm definitely gonna keep in mind when I go to replace this printer eventually. I know this printer is not easy to find now. I have a feeling there might be a new one coming out. I have no idea if that's for sure, just a hunch. But I wanted to make this video because I do feel like you're going to see a lot more on the used market this year. And if you do see one and you don't have a photo printer, this is a great starter printer. It gets you some prints to hand out, to sell even, to take to art contests or art galleries and present your work. It gets you in the practice of printing your work in terms of just that mentality of having that tangible element at the end of the whole process. There's something to be said for that. There's many positives to that. You start editing your work and treating your work differently when you see it on the paper. You start noticing things that, oh, that didn't show up on my digital screen, or that didn't show up on the digital file. I need to account for that next time. Account for it in shooting, account for it in editing and whatnot. My work shifted when I started printing my photos. I started noticing things and taking things into account, thinking about that I might want to print this someday down the road. So getting in that practice of printing it, your work helps you make different creative decisions earlier on. Getting used to different kinds of paper is something that's been really fun. Understanding the benefits of different kinds of mats, the different weights of papers, the luster versus gloss, and all these different paper choices. It's been really fun and really beneficial. And I could go on and on about the benefit of printing your photos. I think there are a ton of YouTube videos out there on that subject. So I won't do that in this video. But my main thing is to vouch for the Pro-100. I've had mine for 5 years. If you buy it now and have it for 5 years, I think that's a worthy investment if you're serious about your photography. So that's it. I will link to the Pro-100 as it is currently priced on Amazon with an affiliate link below. But I would suggest keep an eye on the used market first, because people usually have acquired these with package deals with the cameras, and sometimes they don't want them, so they'll get rid of them there. So look in the used market. If not, use the affiliate link below, find it on Amazon, start printing your photos, and share with me some of the photos that you are printing if you are. And like always, thanks for watching. Talk to you soon.